Today we have my favorite guest today, which is my husband, Mike. You wave your hand. If you see this on YouTube, you can see us. Anyways, we're going to talk about the patriarchal system and how it's harmed men. Because we talk a lot about how, as women, it can be a challenge having lived in that society and that training. And there's huge challenges for men. And I thought, who better than my husband to talk about this? So that's what we get. So, Michael Jean, patriarchal system, an unhealthy masculine system. I feel like it's hurt men because boys are not taught to feel emotions. Little boys don't cry. But the interesting thing is actually statistically little boys cry more than girls. But yet they're taught to be tough and respectable and suppress their emotions and disconnect from themselves. Tell me more about how that was being raised in that environment and how you see that from your perspective.
Sure. So, again, being raised in North Dakota on a farm, very patriarchal system, very Catholic. So the boys, we were taught very much at a young age, we have to get out, do our chores, be strong. I felt like I was never really allowed to speak emotionally or share feelings or anything like that. It was be tough, we've got work to do, keep pushing on. And I found over the years that I thought it turned into a very performance-based growth pattern. If you were the strongest, if you were the fastest, if you were the whatever-est, that's what was really reinforced for boys.
Which, gosh, I can't imagine how challenging that would be. I feel like boys being raised in this sort of system, they're given the 6 crayon box with the big crayons, but yet the only 2 emotional crayons they're really taught are anger and sadness. And girls are given the box of 12 or 24 crayons, or we have a few more. But really, our emotions really come in about a 64 crayon box. And most of us aren't really aware of that. And that's the whole part of emotional intelligence and connecting with ourselves. And I think the patriarchal system kind of sees emotions as like, I don't know if it's bad, but like not helpful and things to suppress or things to get in the way rather than as, information and humanness and all of that. So I feel like, the challenge with this is the lack of vulnerability this causes when you can't be really honest. Causes a lot of isolation, and isolation, also perfectionism, because like you said, performance is a big piece that can cause isolation too, because you're really not showing who you really are. And I especially where we live in Montana, we have pretty high suicide rate for young men, which just breaks my heart. But Montana is still, I think in general, a little bit more of like that push down your emotions, get disconnected from yourselves as men, and that does not help. Where overall men have a higher suicide rate, like 3 to 4 times the rate of women as that of men that die by suicide.
Yeah, well, when you think about it, Montana is pretty conservative, so it's a very manly place to grow up. So you're guys, hunting, fishing, hiking, skiing, all of those things. So even the culture here it's a very masculine type culture.
Which is interesting because, that people would naturally disassociate those things from emotions, which just isn't true at all or healthy. And so it's just, I think we're waking up, which I love that. But I think, the importance is, we don't understand how much men have suffered from this too, and just how we can appreciate and support men in general. And that's just huge. So I feel like in general, the unhealthy male, or you can call it the patriarchal society or however, it's really about performance and power, like you mentioned. And emotions can come out sideways. And so a lot of times, like you mentioned, it can come out as aggression, like defensive honor, accumulation, which gives wealth and power, and sexual prowess, which I think gets to a point where you're basically objectifying sex and rather trains men, that sex is transactional rather than relational and not a result of intimacy.
It's it. Transactional sex is kind of what I think back when I was growing up, what we were taught, or even if it was unspoken, that's what the culture was. It's very transactional.
and not a result of intimacy.
Nope.
Which I have to be honest, that's been like a really cool thing between us, because I had some of that transactional thinking because in my last marriage of 22 years, we didn't have a close relationship at all.
Right.
And so it was more transactional. So I've had to do work on myself, really kind of retraining my brain, because, sexual relationship and sexuality is a culmination of just intimacy and closeness.
We've talked about that many times, how the physical part of sex is great, but for me, which I think can be a little bit not very common with guys, the sexual relationship is very much it's founded on, or the basis of that is an emotional connection first. It's not a physical connection. It's the emotional connection with Tara. That's what causes the physical relationship to really thrive.
Yes. And I think men are designed in a similar way, where, sexuality stemming from emotional closeness is going to be more meaningful. But when you're disconnected from your emotions and you have your 6-crayon box of crayons, your expression of that can really be tainted. So, but I do think, once men have intimacy with themselves, as far as understanding their emotional ability and just getting connected with their feelings, and feelings are information. They're not good or bad. They're just helpful information and a knowing. And then having that intimacy with somebody else, it can create for a really almost spiritual sexual relationship. So just not transactional.
Exactly.
So, yeah. I wasn't planning on getting in much of a sex talk, but hey, good job, Mike. I love it.
Anytime.
Woohoo. So it's really hard for, men. And this is why I just wanted to talk about this, because I don't want, as women, thinking that we've been hurt by this patriarchal society. Really, we all have. And so I think understanding that gives us compassion, and really understanding that when men are in their healthy masculine, and we all have a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine within us, and an unhealthy masculine and unhealthy feminine. And we're going to talk about that more in the next episode. But this unhealthy masculine, and unhealthy feminine can create chaos. And when they're both living in their healthiness, then there's not a competition, it's a collaboration. And it's so wonderful. I remember building some spec houses, and I had, a male builder, and it was so funny because he would come up with ideas of hey, this would be great, and this would be really awesome. And most of them were great ideas, but some of them I'm like, oh, no way. That would not be good as a feminine person. We would not like that. And vice versa. I'm like, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? He's like, yeah, that doesn't work that way. And so it was really nice. That was just an example of how, men and women being a little different, how it is just a beautiful thing. And there's a collaboration. And that's what I really love about our relationship, is it's really collaborative.
Very much. And
more teamwork. And we don't have power struggles because we're both great.
Yeah, we're just whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
It's all right.
Yes. Are you feeling stuck in with love, wealth, or peace? Well, you're not alone. Often it's a subconscious belief holding you back. That's why I combined life coaching and hypnotherapy together, so you can break through what's been keeping you stuck. Life coaching helps you shift your mindset, while hypnotherapy works deep within to reprogram limiting beliefs and memories. It's fast, it's effective, typically one session of each, and I have a few openings left. Are you ready for a change? Visit livebrighter.info and book your free consultation and see if this approach is right for you. See you then. So how did we raise our sons a little differently? Because we both have sons, and raising them differently than how we were taught.
That is so wild, because I did not make the conscious decision to be like, okay, I am not going to raise Brad and Joe, very in a strong performance-based way of thinking. I just never did that consciously. Mm-hmm. I couldn't have described it to you back then, I don't even know what all this means. I'm just raising my sons the way that I want them to be raised, which was, very encouraging, very loving, I gave them a lot of freedom to make their own decisions. There obviously was guardrails and boundaries. You know, you have to have that with every child. But I really let them kind of feel out their own way quite a bit. And I was super encouraging. I think I told you in a previous episode, I never had my dad tell me I love you
Yeah.
ever. And it would have, you know, and I didn't need that every day to be a healthy boy. Once a decade would have been anything. Give me something.
Give me something there.
Yeah, but I was very cognizant of that to tell them frequently, daily, hey, you do you, no matter what happens, I love you. Don't be a ding dong and don't make bad mistakes. You know, there will be consequences for that. But also, it's just like, go do you.
Yeah.
I love you.
Which I think is remarkable coming from the background that you came from, where there wasn't the emotional expression
Right.
or the softness allowed or the individuality allowed,
No.
any of that. And it was definitely a different thing, and how basically you went completely opposite and were very loving, nurtured
Yeah.
your sons and let them express themselves and stuff like that. I think
Yeah.
that's really cool.
You know, sometimes I think it just, like I said, I didn't do it consciously, but maybe my subconscious took over and was like,
Yeah, and that resonated with you, and you knew, and the boys are definitely thriving from that.
it's there.
So, and then Colton, I was very conscientious of this too. You know, his dad is on the autism spectrum and so disconnected emotionally. And so, you know, just training him that emotions are healthy expressions and understanding them and being curious and not judgmental and this and that. And, you know, and kind of, you know, just nurturing that with him. And it's just been fun to see how, and I always laugh because he's actually way more talkative than all three girls. And he was since he was a kid. It was just the funniest thing. You think that girls are more talkative, but he was, you know, since he was talking, you know, just jabber, jabber, jabber. So, yeah, it's really fun. But, you know, we've really tried to be intentional about allowing them to be more on the healthy masculine side, and just that is a respectful and honorable thing. I think, you know, I feel like there's a lot of shame, you know, that surrounds this. I don't know. How would you describe how shame plays out in like the patriarchal system when I think if you're constantly having to protect from who you truly are, that's a lot of shame and stuff in that.
There's a lot of guilt. And
Guilt.
yeah, a lot of guilt initially, but then it transitions into shame that you can't get away from, because you can feel guilty about something, and then you get past that feeling of guilt. But this mountain of shame is shackled to you and drug with you throughout your entire life. So that I think the patriarchal system is very much attached to that, the shame component, and that's a tough one to break.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think so. What would you have advice for men? Like, you know, if they've come from that patriarchal background and they've come from, you know, that sort of thing, and they're just, or maybe a lot of the people that listen to this show are women, how can they be more like understanding and compassionate, but yet not in a way that justifies bad behavior?
Yes, that is so difficult because there's so many components to it. It has, and I think it has to start with the guy. And for me, if I wouldn't have gone to counseling, I wouldn't have picked up on any of this stuff. I would have been that hard charger, male dude driving through life. So the counseling, first of all, helped, and it helped get past some trauma that I had, which opened up the thought process of, okay, this performance-based lifestyle. But also, having you in my life has been wonderful because you are so knowledgeable in this and so wise, and you've done years of study on this. And so the best way to do it is if you have a guy who is open to it. Just consider it, first of all. But then if you do it, the guy has to do it individually. But if he has a teammate who works with him and helps him through this, because for a man to go through this alone, it can be scary. They may not want to admit it's scary, but it is scary for a guy to do this, because now you are talking a lot more about your emotions than you ever have in your entire life. And so I guess, what am I saying?
So
Tremendous
it's more
support.
like, yeah, support, counseling, women can create safety. Um,
Yes.
and also, we need to do the work on ourselves emotionally because
Yeah.
otherwise, I think it's so funny in intimate relationships, we will definitely trigger our unhealed pain. And so rather than looking at it as like, hey, we're like fighting with each other or we're having this, it's like we're triggering our unhealed pain and let's go a little deeper and let's see how we can grow from this. Yes, but I think honestly, like the first step too is like, remember the emotion wheel that I put on the fridge? It's like, you kind of have to get to know yourself and like, hey, this is what shame feels like, and this is where it feels in my body. This is what embarrassment feels like, which is different. This is what, pride feels like, a good, healthy pride. This is what joy feels like, and just kind of get basically the language of emotion and where it's at in your body.
Yes. And I just thought of something that probably the number one best thing that how you support me through all of this is I understand now, and this took a while to figure out, but when you said, you can tell me anything, tell me how you feel, it's non judgmental. From living 50 plus years in a very judgmental way, whether it was self judgment or judgment by others, that is hard. And so I think you notice I still talk more. Like I'm still opening up more because for me to say something and have it heard by you in a non judgmental way, and you can't take that information like if you're the woman and you say, okay, you can tell me anything, I won't hold anything against you, you have to mean that. You cannot bring that up later and or let that let that go into a future thought train to use that ammo to collect ammo to use against him or even her. It
Yeah,
goes both ways in that relationship. For me, that has allowed me to speak so much of just me,
yes.
like my inside thoughts and all of that, because I know I'm going to tell you, you're going to trust what I'm saying is true to me, whether it may sound goofy or not, but it is just the real me. And so knowing that I can tell you anything and it's not going to come back to bite me in the ass later on or in a judgmental way, that is probably the most powerful thing as I think about it.
Yeah, that's huge. So basically, it's like you're being vulnerable, and I'm not taking that vulnerability and judging it, and then later using it as ammunition against you.
Exactly.
Like, basically, intimacy comes from a person being vulnerable, and then the other person being able to comfort or just receive, be a container, and, creating a safe place. And that's what creates intimacy.
Yes.
And if that is regularly used against you, or it's used in a way that I'm just reacting to, then that does not create intimacy.
Yeah, and it's very different because if I can do the same thing, I can do it with a counselor who is very unemotional. I go in and just bleh, like that, right? And then I leave. But now the risk is I'm doing that with my intimate partner. I'm telling you the same things and I'm just going bleh. And it's a lot riskier to do that because now the person of my dreams, my partner in life, knows these things about me, and that's where it gets uncomfortable because you really have to trust that person.
Oh, yeah. Because basically, I think as an intimate couple, we know what we could say and do to break the other person. And that is
Absolutely.
Like a place of respect and like love that is like taken care of. But one thing too is you do your emotional processing on your own. Like you don't barf all over me all the time because it's like we're responsible for processing our own emotions and kind of getting in touch with that,
Right.
and then like sharing it with each other. And sometimes we like kind of barf it all up, but as much as we can, we try to process some of our emotions too, so it can come in a package that's not quite so like.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing about all that. I think like for people understanding kind of the journey it's been, gosh, yeah, I think about it like Mike's been raised in an environment where emotions and masculine looked very different. And then kind of that bit you in the ass and when you were like a young adult and having to stuff all that and how it just kind of erupted in your mental challenge. And then And then I had my mental challenge from trying to exist in an environment that I knew wasn't healthy. But yet I was going to do it anyways. I was going to do it. And just, not being really authentic with myself. Like, this is really hurting me and this is really not good for me. And so really we've just become more honest and authentic with ourselves, and had that relationship with God first. And then, doing that with each other. And then for me, it's always, I always joke with Mike, I'm like, okay, I want to know the good, the bad, the ugly. Because if I don't know anything emotionally that's going on underneath the surface, I don't feel close. Like, I don't have connection.
True.
And so we definitely try to maintain that. And Mike's realized that it's a safe environment for him to just be himself.
Took a while.
Woohoo! So that's what we have today. Next week, I'm going to talk about just the healthy masculine, the unhealthy masculine, and the healthy feminine and unhealthy. Because we have some of both masculine and feminine in each of us to varying degrees, and just understanding the difference between how the healthy shows up and the unhealthy, and kind of what triggers that unhealthy part, and how we can kind of soothe ourselves in a healthy way rather than having it come out sideways. So, thank you.
You're welcome, honey. I
Okay.
love you.
Make it a great day and grow 1% or more in just knowing yourself and expressing yourself. You want to create a community that you can be real and authentic with, because that's when you're really living. And I love it.
Amen.
Woohoo! Bye-bye. Stay tuned for our next episode.